Greetings, friends, and welcome to the woods. I had a question a little while back about the the fairies portrayed in Maleficent and how close that is in actuality to the fairy kingdom as we experience it here and now. And I I I had to go back and rewatch to remind myself of how they were portrayed in the first movie. And I have to say, yes, the fairy tribe is very similar to that, but they don't exist side by side with us. At one point, when our planet was of a higher vibration before it descended down into third and became more dense, there was much more pass through from what we call the three-dimensional Earth to four-dimensional Earth, the astral, the plane that we go to when we dream. And with that, there was a lot more interaction. Now, the Feyfolk can ascend into fourth. They can come back down into the physical. When they're in the physical, they're vulnerable. So their preference is to remain at a higher frequency. Those who are clairvoyant can perceive them, and they can affect our world to a greater or lesser degree. Iron does provide a barrier for them that their energy work cannot easily penetrate, and when they try, it does harm them. So that part is accurate, but our ability to access their kingdom, their realm, their space is very limited because our frequency is so dense, it is so low. And while there was a time when that pass through was easier, uh, when we brought our energy down, when the planet brought the energy down, and especially when we personally do things to our bodies to lower our vibration, it makes it very difficult to interact, to see, to perceive the fourth dimension, the astral plane, and certainly to have contact with these beings. Now, this is reversed. We have been in the process for a while of the planet is ascending. And so, in essence, the astral, what we call the astral, the 4D Earth, is crashing into the physical, the 3D Earth that we live in, which is why our reality has become increasingly destabilized and stranger. And there are some of us who will not be capable of making the shift into that vibratory frequency. They may need to uh, maintain their essence in a different space. However, for most of us, and certainly all of those listening to me here, uh, you're moving up, and so the interaction with Faye, it's going to get stronger. Yes, they exist as a part of the natural world, and it is one with them. And depicting Maleficent as a champion of the symbiotic entities who create and maintain the natural space and cause it to flower, to be abundant, to be rich and strong, is very accurate. I know when I first observed the entity that the Norse, the heathens, call Loki, I was very surprised. I was expecting to encounter something very malevolent. And what I discovered instead was that this is a being like Maleficent from this particular storyline, the newer storyline. This is a being that is protecting the natural space from incursion. And those who farm us, those who came to this planet to farm us, have been using us as their dogs. In essence, they have domesticated us, and they, just like hunting dogs, you send the hunting dogs out to chase the prey out so that you can shoot it. They have used us in much the same way to do things that they didn't feel like doing. They didn't want dirty their karma up with, they didn't want to dirty their hands with, and so they send us, their dogs, to do their dirty work for them. And as a result, some of the beings that were protectorates and helped us understand the natural space and the natural ways and worked with other sentient beings to interact in that space, to work harmoniously. Basically, the leaders of those spaces worked to put boundaries on humans, and if that meant that harm came to humans who stepped over those boundaries or to push back, so be it. Their primary uh, goal, their primary responsibility was to preserve the natural spaces and the creatures of those spaces, the primal world, the organic world, against terraforming, which was and is happening, against um, human and extra-human malevolence and interference, mechanical interference, that which would level, destroy, and genocide the entities, the colonies, the natural native species who either were brought here but made it their home and integrated into the planet and the way that the planet chooses to represent herself or to express herself, and those that she birthed, the planet birthed herself to exist within her ways and her mantle of being. So Loki wasn't what I expected, nor were his children. If you read the mythos, you'll understand what I mean. But they each had their respective realms that they worked on to safeguard the folk of those areas from excursion, exploitation, incursion. So yeah, the Maleficent movie, it does a pretty good job of representing the other side, and we're gonna need to understand things on that level, because we're gonna start to see where we have been led astray. Those we thought were the good guys were not the good guys. Those we thought were the evil villains were not necessarily the evil villains. We're gonna start to grow up and become wiser in how we conduct ourselves and in observing our history. And with that said, I have to point out that the time is coming soon when we're going to have more and more interactions with other realms of being. And we're going to understand that we are part of a much larger family. We're not alone in the universe. We never have been. We've simply been quarantined. We've simply been set aside. We've simply been locked up. And that is changing. I know that I've complained a lot about our vocabulary or our lack thereof, our lack of words to express experiences and entities. It's frustrating to me that so many people who are aware of other beings have chosen to they've chosen the path of least resistance, and they just go with, okay, well, let's just all consider all of the entities on 5G. Let's just call them all angels. They're all angels, and all the ones who oppose us, those are all just demons, and let's just go with that. That's kind of like teaching kids that anything that comes out of the ocean is a fish. So they're pointing at a lobster and saying fish, and they're pointing at a scuba diver and saying fish, and they're pointing at a dolphin and saying fish. And sooner or later, we're going to have to come up with a good vocabulary for what we're dealing with. Now, the Catholics call them saints, and in the Asian, they call them bodhisattvas, and we might call them gods with a small g. We have to start being able to consolidate our language enough so that we all know what we're talking about. Is it a revenant? Is it a ghost? Is it a god? Is it an angel? What are we talking about? Is it a fae? Which fae? Which tribe? There are many. I suppose you don't need to learn a vocabulary for something that you don't have anything to do with and that you don't believe exists, which is why we have the words we have today and the lack of agreement in what we have today. But as we shift up, we're going to have to start figuring out who's who, what's what, where do they come from, and what our history is with these beings. And with that said, welcome to the woods.